Hey, what's up? This is Mr. Ippolito. Today we're going to go over Ken Burns' Civil War, The Cause, just the first part of the documentary. Please make sure that you watch and listen to all of the responses because this is really good stuff. Let's go ahead and jump right in. The first part that we took notes on is called All Night Forever. There's a brief, like 2-minute song piece called We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. It was a slave spiritual. And while that music is playing, there are photographs of enslaved people. And so I just asked you, first of all, to give a few adjectives to describe the photographs of those slaves. Your answers will vary. Fewer than 4 out of 100 slaves lived to be 60 years old, which just is indicated. It indicates the high mortality rate, how difficult that life was with the abuse and disease and lack of nutrition. Slaves on the auction block were made to jump and dance to show their sprightliness. They were examined like a jockey examines a horse. So again, just treating enslaved humans as though they're animals. Thomas Jefferson said, speaking of animals, maintaining slavery is like holding a wolf by the ears. You don't like it, but you don't dare let it go. Jefferson really speaking to how difficult this institution of slavery was. He, in fact, was an enslaver. He did own hundreds of humans in his lifetime, and I think he recognized the evils of slavery and how it was incompatible with his all men are created equal, but he just didn't know how to quit it. He didn't know how the United States was going to let it go. So it's just like that metaphor. You're holding a wolf by the ears. You don't like it, but he can't foresee of a circumstance where the United States could possibly let it go. 1793, Eli Whitney invents the cotton gin. This really causes the demand for enslaved humans to go up, especially in the deep South, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas. So cotton production goes up, and as a result of the invention of the cotton gin, demand for enslaved labor also increases as well. By 1860, the United States had 400 million slaves. Actually, that's wrong. The answer is only 4 million. We don't even have 400 million Americans in this country right now. We're at about 335 million. This is for those people who are just scrolling through looking for the answers. So if you have the answer 4 million, you are correct. This is my way of just initiating a conversation with people who are maybe going a little bit too fast through the notes. But the correct answer is 4 million. Okay. Are We Free? Talking about abolitionists. William Lloyd Garrison publishes a newspaper called The Liberator. He called for the immediate abolition. In other words, we need to get rid of slavery immediately. He doesn't want any transition time, or he doesn't want to mess around. His message: slavery is sin, and those who maintain it are criminals. Another abolitionist, the author Harriet Beecher Stowe, she publishes a novel called Uncle Tom's Cabin. It reveals the cruelty of slavery. Queen Victoria of England wept over it, right? If you recall, nearly 1.5 million copies were sold. This is really, for many people in the North, the first time that they ever get any kind of experience with enslavement. And so even though it's a work of fiction, she reveals for many people in the North like how cruel slavery really is. Speaking of abolitionists, we're now going to talk about John Brown. October 16th, 1859, he enters Harper's Ferry, Virginia. This is an arsenal. This is where the United States Army stores guns, ammunition, bullets, gunpowder, with a plan to arm the enslaved, or arm slaves in the Upper South in Virginia, and then lead them south along the Appalachian Mountains, basically just leading this massive slave revolt and liberating all the slaves throughout the South. He was unsuccessful. So was John Brown successful? No. What future Confederate general stopped him? Robert E. Lee, who was in charge of the Virginia militia at the time. And then John Brown was hanged for treason against the state of Virginia. There's a picture of John Brown right now, right there. According to historian Edward Beers, why was John Brown the most important factor in starting the Civil War? So Edward Beers was that older historian who says, John Brown, known for only one thing, a failure for everything in life. And even though he failed in this uprising, this was the big impact, right? It mobilized as a result of the fear that Southern whites had that the enslaved were going to murder them in their beds. They were afraid of this massive slave uprising. And so it really mobilized and galvanized these Southern militias. The historian Edward Beers says, the Southern militias, which had been a joke before, begin to take their true form. It was the beginning of the Confederate Army. Finally, Frederick Douglass, voiced by Morgan Freeman, says, I could live for the slave, but John Brown could die for him. So this was also something that really terrified Southern whites, was the fact that here is a white man, John Brown, who is actually willing to die in the cause of abolition. He's willing to, a white man was willing to die, a northern white man is willing to die for the cause of ending slavery. And so they thought, well, gee, John Brown might just be the beginning. There might be other northern whites too who are willing to sacrifice their lives to end slavery. All right, so now their fear, the fear is setting in with the South, with the Southern whites. The presidential election of 1860, James Buchanan, who was the president, who was elected in 1856, he decides to step aside. He will not run again for the Democrats. Who was the tall man who was the nominee for the Republican Party? That was, of course, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln said, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves." So Lincoln really comes out as very much anti-slavery, although he... to clarify Lincoln's position, he told the South very clearly, I do not intend to interfere with the institution of slavery where it already exists. I just don't want it to spread any further into any of the Western territories or future states that may be added to the United States. On November 6th, 1860, Lincoln won the presidency with only 40% of the popular vote. I do want to emphasize popular vote, and we will go over the difference between the popular and the electoral vote. But 40% of the popular vote, he did not even appear on the ballot in 10 southern states. So this really terrified southern whites because they thought, you know what, we couldn't even vote against this guy if we wanted to, and he still won. He wasn't even on the ballot. So at this point, Southerners are feeling powerless. They are feeling like the North has way more power, way more influence, way more say in the presidential election than they do. They are worried the North now has a majority. Those free states have a majority in the Senate. They outnumber the slave states, and so they're really getting paranoid, and they're like, you know what, we got to go. Historian Shelby Foote says the Southerners were so worried about Abraham Lincoln as president because they feared they were going to lose their property, right? And of course, by property we mean enslaved humans that they own. Many Southerners thought secession was madness. One Southern politician said South Carolina is too small for a republic and too large for an insane asylum. So we're not quite to the point of civil war yet. South Carolina is only the first state to go, but eventually the dominoes are going to fall. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president, there were 33 states in the Union. 34th free Kansas was about to join, but by the time he was inaugurated, only 27 states would remain. So the southern states start breaking away. South Carolina, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana. There are other Southerners who are trying to say, you know what, you need to understand that this is not going to end well. And Sam Houston, you remember Sam Houston from the Texas War for Independence. He is now the governor of Texas. At this time, he says, you know what? The North is not a fiery, impulsive people as you are, for they live in colder climates. But when they begin to move in a given direction, they move with the steady momentum and perseverance of a mighty avalanche. And Texas left anyway. And they deposed Sam Houston. They kicked him out as governor. They're like, you're not telling us what we want to hear. We want to hear secede, break away. And Sam Houston's like, you're going to lose. South, you're going to lose. The North is going to win. They didn't listen to him. The Charleston Mercury, this is from Charleston, South Carolina. The tea has been thrown overboard. The revolution of 1860 has been initiated. Of course, this is them trying to compare their cause, trying to compare what they're doing with the Boston Tea Party, with the American Revolution. They believe their cause to be just. They believe that they were fighting for freedom. The freedom to do what? Oh, to enslave other humans. That's the freedom that they were fighting for, but they thought they were fighting for their freedom. Jefferson Davis is going to be elected president of the Confederate States of America. In the words of one Southerner, he was cold as a lizard and ambitious as Lucifer. Lucifer is the devil. So they really felt that he was a very calculating politician, but a good politician, a good effective politician who knew how to get what he wanted. And so he would be elected the one and only president of the Confederate States of America. Vice President Alexander Stephens says, our new government is founded upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man. And I think that says pretty clearly what the Confederacy is all about. They are all about, let's face it, white supremacy, right? They are all about, their foundational belief is that white people are superior to black people. So he says it very clearly. And finally, the last thing the video talks about, Abraham Lincoln set out from his home of Springfield, Illinois, to head to Washington, D.C. for his inauguration. And then finally he arrives, and the inauguration day is March 4th, 1861. And he says in his first inaugural address, in your hands, my dissatisfied countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. We must not be enemies, though passion may have strained. It must not break our bonds of affection. In other words, he's saying, you know what? We got to stick together. But if civil war is going to happen, it's going to be on you. It's not going to be us. It's going to be on you, Southerners. It's going to be on you, Confederate. This confederacy that you're creating. It's not going to be on us. All right. Well, I hope that helped. Thank you so much for taking a tour through the answers to Ken Burns' Civil War. And if you have other questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.